Cheers on PointsBet.
Welcome to Bet the Edge on Monday, August 1st. I want to thank those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. I'm your host, Brad Thomas, joined by Drew Dinsick. Coming up, the Premier League kicks off on Friday, and we're going to talk about multiple futures with NBC Sports lead soccer writer Joe Prince-Wright, including some value on Player of the Year, and if anyone can knock off Liverpool and Manchester City to win the title. Plus, as always, Drew and I will wrap up the show with our Edge of the Day. All that and more on PointsBet. All that and more on Bet the Edge, powered by PointsBet. Drew, this weekend, listen, man, I was absolutely devastated yesterday with the news of Bill Russell. I think, like, when I saw the news, I saw it first and I was like, this can't be real. Like, this has to be a joke. I thought it was a troll account. And the 11-time champion is gone, but not forgotten. His impact on basketball is just absolutely phenomenal. And, it was kind of tough for me to deal with.
Yeah, his accomplishments, it's tough to really even characterize it all. He was a legendary figure in the same breath of the same sentence as Muhammad Ali. And it really is quite sad to see him pass at age 88. But I think he really deserves so much credit for kind of bringing the NBA to the place where it became, a household, part of the sports conversation in the United States. And, his Celtics teams will, fondly be remembered as truly, incredible dynasty. And I think realistically, all of the tributes that I've seen, all of the pieces that I've read in the wake of this have been, have done great service to all the contributions he made to the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there will ever be a team to win 8 straight titles. And one thing that was really exciting for me, being a person of color and talking about Bill Russell, was how much he had to endure, but still chased his passion and elevated the game. So rest in peace to the absolute legend and one of the best to ever play the sport.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's well said. And I think, and you're correct. The contributions that he made beyond the game, just to the world broadly, I think are probably the most important thing, the most important part of his legacy. So, 100% agree. That was pretty incredible. And, as much as that was a little bit of a kind of a sad note, it was pretty unbelievable on a positive note to see 90,000 people celebrate a women's final in the Euro in Wembley. I was excited for that tournament, the entire tournament. You as a soccer guy, I'm sure,
yes.
We were cheated out of a Summer World Cup because they're going to, contend it here in this winter. But Women's Euro really delivered the goods. There was some outstanding soccer played, and really and truly that final was a nail biter. I didn't have a great weekend betting wise. Really, like UFC kind of picked my pocket. Baseball and golf, everything kind of went sideways for me. But the draw came through. The draw came through in a big way. It was plus 230. So kind of saved my weekend there. And ultimately for England to lift the trophy and to do it in extra time, not even need PKs. Although if they had gone to PKs, I think England was still going to win. But very, very cool to see them celebrate on home turf. And that was probably the highlight of my weekend sports-wise. How about you?
Man, listen, golf was really good to me, but I'm still kicking myself in the face because I nailed so many top 20 and top 10 bets. I had Tony Finau as top 20, and I'm just telling myself, like, there's no way Tony Finau, a guy who doesn't know how to win, is going to go back-to-back. Like, if we look at it realistically, the last time someone went back-to-back was in 2019, and he just runs away with it at the end. And I had Cantlay. I was just super sad that I had all this action on these placement bets, but none of my guys could actually win.
Well, the thing about Finau is funny is this is kind of what happened to Scotty Scheffler at the beginning of the season.
Yes.
Scotty just couldn't get it done. He was always the bridesmaid, couldn't get a win. And then all of a sudden it clicked and he just went bang, 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 got to world number 1. And now it feels like Finau is kind of on that same sort of heater. And it's awesome because he clearly has the talent. And honestly, like, should we be looking at him for Masters next year? Like, should we get an early price?
I think we should, because what's different about Finau is he's figured the flat stick out. He's rolling the ball exceptionally. And I mean, why not get in early? This is the best price we're going to get.
Yeah, no, we agree.
So just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet, go download it now. The contests are free, easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands by predicting what will happen in Major League Baseball and on the PGA Tour and NASCAR circuit. We also have a special contest on Tuesdays and Thursdays called Battle of the Bets, where you can agree or disagree with our experts for a shot to collect some cash. Well, let's bring him in. The man, the myth, the legend, Joe Prince-Wright, to talk about some Premier League futures. How are you doing today, Joe?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited for this new Premier League season.
Oh, I'm so stoked. We are so close. Listen, the news, the talk of the town, the biggest signing of the transfer window, Erling Haaland is now playing at Manchester City. He's plus 275 to be top goal scorer, plus 900 for player of the year, plus 250 for young player of the year. Are you buying how much his impact will help reshape Manchester City and kind of make them run away with the Premier League title this season?
You know what? If you watched the Community Shield at the weekend, obviously he had a bit of a howler that he missed at the end there. He hit the crossbar from close range. And I think a lot of people already trying to put a bit of pressure on Haaland, say, oh, maybe he won't be as good as he was at Dortmund in the Premier League. But I have no real doubts about that. I spoke to Man City legend Joleon Lescott over the summer. Obviously, he's a legendary centre half for Man City in England, and he just spoke glowingly about not only Haaland's skill on the ball and his runs off it, but just how he wants to prove everyone wrong. He's almost like that Zlatan Ibrahimovic character that he wants to, test himself and push himself to the limits. And he will do that at City. He'll get lots of chances. We know that. How many times over the last few years have we said, oh, when that ball comes over to the 6-yard box, no one's there to tap it in. Oh, they need a number 9. But you know what? I don't know if they actually do need a central striker to get to that next level. I mean, they have looked a lot better when they've been playing with a false 9, be it Phil Foden, De Bruyne, even Raheem Sterling when he's there. But I do think Haaland is going to score 20-plus goals this season. There's no doubt about that. But that essentially just replaces the goals that they'll be missing from selling Gabriel Jesus and Raheem Sterling. So I think City will be a similar proposition. I think the only issue potentially is they're going to play a bit differently with a number 9. It didn't really work with Aguero under Guardiola. So how are they going to have to tweak the midfield and get in Haaland the support he needs in the final third? It's easier said than done, I think, when there's such a well-oiled machine and every player knows where they have to be in the final third of the pitch. Even if you bring in a top-quality striker like Haaland, he's a different type of player than Man City have had for the last few seasons and since Pep Guardiola's been there. But I'm saying all this, but again, he's probably going to score 20-plus goals, and I definitely think he's the favorite to be the Golden Boot winner.
Ooh, wow. Okay. All right. Good deal. It's been very tough for me to kind of really wrap my head around how Man City's going to change. And you bring up what do they need to take it to the next level? Really, they just need to avoid Real Madrid in the Champions League draw, and they'll probably be fine. But no, in seriousness, the Player of the Year market for the EPL is a tough handicap, and you're not going to make money. If you're Man City's minus 150. You're not shopping. You're not going to bet that market. Like, let's be honest. Like, why bother? Looking for a season-long payday there when you can attack the Player of the Year market, where the favorite in Kevin De Bruyne is plus 700. He's now, of course, he's won this twice. He's the reigning champion, so I get why he's the favorite. But there are kind of you're going to have to share the credit on Man City, even if they are, the clear class of the EPL here. Does that open the door for a guy like Mo Salah at plus 800 or anyone else, potentially Harry Kane at 12-1 to look at for potentially stealing this award?
Yeah, I think Harry Kane's going to have a great season. Tottenham going to have a great season. I know we'll discuss that a bit later on, but I'm looking down the list, and in terms of value, one guy really stuck out to me, Bukayo Saka, plus 2,500. I mean, that's just incredible odds. And Arsenal, I think, have had a great preseason, great summer, scoring goals galore, demolishing Chelsea on the preseason tour and Sevilla as well. And I just think for Saka, he's right on the cusp of being a starter for England. And look out for players that really need a good start to the season to be in the starting lineup for their national teams at the World Cup in November. So I think Saka kind of falls into that category. But you're right, you can't really look past the likes of De Bruyne, Salah, and Harry Kane. I think all those players there are rightly up there. But I think looking a bit further down the list, some of the value there as well. And Bruno Fernandes, I think that's a player that Erik ten Hag's system and philosophy of being on the ball, being proactive, pressing high, that's going to bring the best out of him. And we could see the Bruno Fernandes that really lit it up a couple of seasons ago. I've been really impressed with him in preseason. And also Jadon Sancho as well. Maybe it's just the Englishman and me coming out, but I think he's going to have a great second season at Man United. It was not a good first season for him coming into the Premier League, but we all know that Man United struggled across the board. So, yeah, I like a couple of Man United players, but the value for me is Bukayo Saka because, yeah, I love him, and I think Arsenal are going to have a really good season under Mikel Arteta.
I'm all on board with Arsenal. They had probably one of the best transfer windows. I would actually look at a guy like Jesus. I backed him to be top goal scorer just because of how elite that front line finally is in moving the ball. Arsenal have always missed that true number 9 or the number 9 with creativity, and him getting service from Saka, him getting service from Martinelli allows him to hit that 20-plus goal mark. And Arteta knows, that defense is going to need some work. Even adding Zinchenko, I don't think that defense is going to be as good as everyone thinks they are. They're going to have to score goals. Now, if you look at Manchester City, and this is evidence from the Community Shield, that their offense, even with Haaland, might not be what everyone thinks it's going to be, because in Pep's system, you need at least 2 years to kind of transform your body, transform your tactics, transform your philosophy to kind of fit in. And a guy like Jesus, a plug and play with Arteta, I mean, his odds are just absolutely wild. If it doesn't go to him, doesn't go to Saka, then it's definitely going to De Bruyne. I mean, think about it. Haaland's taking up so much of that attention going forward. It allows De Bruyne to get in, shoot a lot, score a lot, and even service Haaland. So I wouldn't be surprised to see KDB go ahead and repeat, but my value guy is Jesus. I'm riding him hard this year in pretty much every market. So another question I want to ask moving forward here. Are there any clubs that you're circling that will creep into the top 10 at the end of the year?
This is really tough. I was looking at this, and I think, you got the big 6 are pretty much set, and then the likes of West Ham, Leicester. I mean, Brighton are the obvious choice, but the odds aren't great there at plus 110. I'm looking at a team like Brentford, and everyone seems to really write them off. They're plus 400. Yes, they've lost Christian Eriksen, who was huge for them in the second half of last season, but made some really good pickups in terms of Ben Mee, a lot of experience, Aaron Hickey, talented young defender, and Keane Lewis-Potter from Hull, who's a really good, exciting, young attacking player as well. So they're kind of stuck to their philosophy, Brentford. Everyone expects them to have that dreaded second season syndrome, right, where everyone's got them figured out. But I just think with playing at home, they pick up a lot of points in that tight little stadium. They were much better, I think, than their final position suggested last season. They were really, really good and pushed a lot of the big boys all the way. So I think that's where the value would lie. And then, as I said, Brighton for me are the team that really, if they can finish chances, they would have been in the top 6 conversation the last few seasons. So if they can finally figure that out, then, and maybe spend some of the money wisely that it looks like they're going to get from Mark Cucurella going to Chelsea potentially, then that is the difference right there. But not a lot of value in this market here. I think a team like Everton, I just don't see it from them. Same with Leeds United. I think there's a lot of pressure on those teams and a lot of maybe expectations just because of their history that they're going to figure it out and be back in mid-table. But I see both of those teams kind of struggling once again. So, yeah, I'd go for Brentford and also Nottingham Forest. They've made, 13 new signings, newly promoted team. Nobody really knows what to expect from them. I don't think even Nottingham Forest know what to expect from themselves. So if they have a good start to the season, never rule out the momentum factor. You always see one good team like Brentford last season starting really well and then just riding that wave of euphoria. So I think there's a lot of excitement around Forest, right, lads, with the being back in the Premier League for the first time since '99. Big team, historic club. I'm looking forward to seeing what they bring to the table. I don't know what you guys think, but I feel like we're in for a few upsets in the top 10 this season.
Well, that's fun. All that is fun. I love the Killer Bees. Brentford at 4-1 is a very solid one to put in pocket. And I do agree. I think a team like Leeds, they should have been relegated last year. Still a little. I had some relegation prices on them that were unfulfilled, and they were good. This is a wide open kind of middle class in the EPL this year. So I do entirely agree that some of these teams expected to land on the bottom half could sneak their way into the top. And Nottingham Forest at plus 650, the price is right. It's going to be a great season. And let's get a little momentum. At that point, the market's going to have to react.
Well, from PointsBet, Brighton and Everton are number 1 and number 2 in liability. And I'm just going to go ahead and say this. I'm throwing Everton way out. Like, losing Richarlison is going to be a bigger impact than most people think. And I think Everton is, once again, is going to have that pressure. They have this new massive stadium that they're building. They have this pressure to succeed. Is Lampard the right manager for them? I'm all over Brighton, as we should. Brighton's very, very exciting. But you touched on it, Joe. Nottingham Forest, they are my biggest bet to not be relegated. And I think with all the signings they had in this offseason, the buzz generated about this team, they have a very, very real chance of finishing top 10. And it's hard not to pass that up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also want to give a shout out to my hometown club, Southampton. Some really interesting things going on there. It could go pear-shaped, as we would say, very wrong very quickly. They've signed 4 players under the age of 21 as their big summer signings. They've gone young. They've gone to Man City's academy, taken the new starting goalkeeper, Romeo Lavia, is 18 years old, Belgian under 21 international. He was the heir to Fernandinho, but decided to go to Saints instead of staying at City. And they're doing things very differently. And it was the former Brentford technical director and CEO, Rasmus Ankerson, who's come in to Saints, bought them with their investment company. And they're just saying, we don't care about buying experienced players. We can only really afford younger players who aren't the finished article. And they've gone all in on that. So I know Southampton's fans are a little bit concerned that they don't have experience, but they have a lot of potential there. So I think it's risky, very risky, considering how close they were to relegation at the end of last season.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of upside to it. If these young players like Tino Livramento last season, who was so good for them, and Brozier was on loan and did really well in stages for Saints, but he's back at Chelsea now because he did so well. If those young players come in and hit the ground running and they can prove themselves in their first ever Premier League season, then the upside's very high. So that's just one team to look out for there, and someone I keep a close eye on. But yeah, it could go very wrong very quickly, or it could be really good. So let's wait and see.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get to top 4 finish and who Joe thinks will win the Premier League this year. But first, we wanted to let you know weekends are better with MLB Sunday Leadoff coverage presented by Uber Eats. Catch the Astros take on the Guardians in Cleveland on Sunday, August 7th at 11:30 Eastern, live on NBC and Peacock. To learn more, go to peacocktv.com/MLB. And if you want a chance to win $25,000 on the game, download the NBC Sports Predictor app powered by PointsBet and enter Sunday's free Grand Slam Pick'em contest. So let's talk a little more about Premier League. Are there any suspecting teams that could land in the top 4? We know that Manchester City and Liverpool are both shoo-ins. Who else could be rounding out this top 4, or any massive dogs?
Well, I think Tottenham are looking pretty good. And then it's just a flip of a coin between Chelsea, Arsenal, and I think it may be too soon for Manchester United, considering their lack of activity transfer-wise. So, yeah, I think Spurs have been the big winners in that market. So I really can see them quite easily finishing in the top 4. And then it just comes down to Chelsea. How many experienced defenders or just players generally can they add in the final weeks of the transfer window? And then Arsenal, I think, are ahead of Manchester United. So they're looking pretty good as well. But if I'm looking outside of that and maybe some underdogs, West Ham are usually pretty good, right, for sticking around. They've done that the last few seasons. They've just faltered because of the size of their squad the last few campaigns. But for the value bet there, West Ham, I'm not sure why Newcastle are that high. I know they finished pretty well last season, but I just cannot see that happening. I think that's too soon in the Eddie Howe project and the players they have. But for West Ham United, I mean, Skamaka's come in, a big summer signing up top, will ease a lot of the pressure on Antonio and Bowen to score goals. And it just depends how seriously they take the Europa Conference League, because they went all the way to the semi-finals of the Europa League last season. And that really impacted their form at the tail end of the Premier League campaign. So they don't have a big squad again. But I think if they don't take the Conference League as seriously as the Europa League, then they can sustain the top 4 push and be right up there towards the end of the season. So I don't know what you guys think, but that's the only real value bet that I see. I think Leicester, Villa, and Newcastle, it's too soon for those teams and their respective rebuilds.
No, and strong agree there. Arsenal owes me. They should have finished top 4 last year. I had a big price on them from because they started really poorly last year.
Yeah, they did.
And I think I
They were
got in at
close.
like 6-1, and then they were very, very close. So I hope I'll keep an eye out for that again. I think Arsenal probably very live to snipe Chelsea for the last of the 4 spots there. And we're kind of just sort of talking around it, but the top of this table, at least the market feels very, very confident that this is going to go Man City 1, Liverpool 2. You can actually bet that exact on PointsBet at plus 150, which is kind of interesting. But I guess here's maybe the right way to frame this question for you, Joe. There is an uncertainty about this season with the World Cup break happening in the middle that we haven't ever had to deal with from handicapping a season-long bet like this before. How does, and how will the kind of the interaction of, we're in the middle of club, professional club soccer. All of a sudden, we're taking a break for international. The England team obviously has very, very high hopes for, achieving World Cup glory. How are those two going to play, over the balance of the season? And does that in some way, shape, or form open up the door for chaos or uncertainty here?
It does, for sure. I think you have to look as well, just from a human being perspective. These players, these star players, are not going to want to get injured in the few weeks leading up to the World Cup and miss the World Cup. So they'll be almost easing off the gas a little bit when we get towards the end of October, start of November. So that's something to look out for in the fixtures just before the World Cup. And just how many players from each team are going to be going to the World Cup, right? You mentioned it there, the English national team. If you look at Liverpool, Man City, Manchester United, Tottenham, they're all going to be missing key players for a huge chunk of time. But then you look a bit further down the league, and some of the teams just may not be missing any players, and they just essentially have a month to work with their squad of players on the training ground to devise plans, stay as fresh as possible. And it could be really topsy-turvy, I think, when we get back into the Premier League season restarting on Boxing Day and then into early January. We're going to see a lot of surprises, I think. I mean, I know that's kind of vague, but I do think we're going to see the World Cup really impact the big teams in terms of some upset results because their players' minds might be elsewhere. So, it's a really good point, Drew, because like you said, this has never happened before, may never happen again. So it's a really unique one-off situation, but I think it's going to impact the teams who have the better players who are going to be going to the World Cup.
I agree. I actually think I'm looking at it from a different point of view. I think about a player like Jadon Sancho, who is battling for the caps, as many caps as he possibly can get. He wants to come in with fine form, and I think that helps Manchester United this year because he wants playing time in the World Cup. And from PointsBet, Manchester United is their biggest liability at plus money odds, and I think it makes sense. I think we do see exactly what you said. A lot of those top talent who know they're shoo-ins for their national teams, they're kind of, don't want to get hurt. They play lackluster football, but then you have young, hungry guys who are fighting for playing time are going to elevate their squads, and they're going to pick up a couple of those cheeky wins or dominating performances when you're just like, wow, United just destroyed somebody, and we thought United weren't going to be as good as they were. So I think there's going to be complete chaos. And if you are betting and you are one of the guys who bets every match day, every match, please take it very cautious around the middle of November, right before we hit the World Cup.
Or just bet the dogs.
Or just bet the dogs. That works as well.
I mean, I have been looking at the schedule ahead of that break, and those last few weekends, Liverpool and Man City on paper look like they have some really easy fixtures, but those are potential banana skins there. Because again, like we said, it's just the players are already thinking about Qatar, World Cup glory, and a lot of those guys, this is, and the likes of Kevin De Bruyne or Virgil van Dijk, this is their legacy, essentially. This is the one trophy that they really want to win with their national teams, and maybe the last chance they get to play at a World Cup in this golden generation, especially with the Belgian team. So, it's so interesting, the psychology, right? And as I said, the human being sort of factor that we forget these players aren't robots and just go out there and do it week in, week out. They really want to win in the World Cup, and they've just got to tread that tightrope of preparing themselves as best as possible, but not overdoing it. So going to see some weird lineups, I think, ahead of the World Cup with players just maybe pulling out with slight hamstring issues and not trying to risk it. So it's going to be intriguing.
Well, can I ask, so is there a flip side to this? So the Premier League, best league, most competitive league on earth. will that help like a team like a team like England, just that all of these guys are in form and playing at the highest level competitively before heading into the international competition? Like is there an angle on England?
Yeah, I think so, to be honest. Brad mentioned it there in terms of that with England, there's probably 5 or 6 players who are guaranteed starters. But then there's a lot of, Jack Grealish, Bukayo Saka, Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford. There's a lot of players, Phil Foden even, you can chuck him into the mix there, who are going to be scrapping for 2 or 3 spots. And then, because Raheem Sterling and Harry Kane going forward for me are going to start for England. They've proved themselves over the years. They work well as a 2 up there, or Sterling just off Kane. So there's 4 or 5 world-class players there just fighting for maybe 1 spot in an attacking midfield area. So, yeah, I think it depends on the national team and what kind of situation they're in. But for England, all of those players there are so close. And you could make the argument for pretty much those 5 or 6 players I mentioned. Mason Mount, I'll chuck him in there as well. They're all around the same kind of level. So I think for their respective teams and for England, it will benefit them early in the season. You can see there, England, just off the favourites. Brazil and Argentina are looking really good for me.
Yeah.
France, a few dodgy results in Nations League, but again, they were trying out a few things, as were England over the summer. So, yeah, I like Spain, though. I have to admit, during the Euros, I think they were very unlucky, and they dominated games and just couldn't finish off chances. So if they can find someone to put the ball in the back of the net, then Spain right there. I don't know if they're in the dark horse category, but very impressed with them. But of course, I'm going to go with England to win the World Cup.
Okay. So if so assuming England, let's assume that everybody kind of makes it through the World Cup, the international break healthy, but that there is some chaos on the front end just because of players, availability and in general, maybe the table doesn't look quite like we would expect at Christmas. But, I guess, is that sort of the way that the arc of the season would play out? And so we kind of, sit on our future and then fire away on, a team like Man City at that international break?
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to wait as long as possible, to be honest, in this weird, wonderful season. We're going to have a World Cup just impacting everything. So wait as long as you can. And Man City are notoriously been kind of slow starters recently. They've only had a couple of preseason games. Community Shield, they looked a bit rusty. Defensively missing some key players. They're in not the best position right now, but I'm very hesitant to say anything negative about Man City because they're an absolute machine. But I'd give it as long as you possibly can, Drew, because, again, it's a weird season. It's a really, really weird season trying to figure things out.
Do you think there's anyone who can take down Manchester City or Liverpool? Like, I'm trying to figure out a club that has a realistic shot. Maybe Tottenham?
That's the only one, Brad. I think that's literally the only team. The way they finished last season, how it just clicked under Antonio Conte, right, with the 3-5-2 and then Son and Kane, and kind of a 3-4-3, right, in the end with Kulusevski behind them as well. And then adding in the likes of Perisic, Richarlison to the mix. I mean, come on, that's just an embarrassment of riches in attack. So if they can figure it out defensively, they'll cause a lot of upsets, and I think they'll hang around all season. The only issue with Spurs is that squad big enough, the fact that they're back in the Champions League to kind of challenge on all fronts. And I don't think they're there yet with Man City and Liverpool. But if City or Liverpool have a bad run or players come back from the World Cup, either injured or not fresh and not informed, then Tottenham are the team there, more so than Chelsea, that I think are there to challenge them. And they've shown it. They have a totally different style of play. Conte is so experienced with the way that he has won so much in his managerial and playing career. And I just think there's really good things going on at Tottenham. They spent early in the summer, had a good preseason. And I just think that's the only other team that could challenge. But I still think one from City and Liverpool will win the Premier League title. I don't know what you guys think, but those two are so far ahead right now that Tottenham, if they get a bit of luck and they play really well, that's the team that could catch them this season.
I've been trying to find the right way to get some exposure to Tottenham because I do see the upside. I do see, and maybe not to dethrone Man City, but to get second. I mean, like realistically, Tottenham, Tottenham and Liverpool, the distance between those teams to me is a lot closer than the market is telling us, which makes interesting bets like in any order, top 2 finish, Man City and Tottenham is 7-1. Man City, Man City over Tottenham is 8-1. Tottenham over Man City 28-1. There's some big prices out there if Tottenham surprise to the good. And if Liverpool, for whatever reasons, takes a step back. I mean, I don't have a really strong reason to doubt Liverpool. I just think Tottenham has made some meaningful steps forward. And if things do click, that's an opportunity to capture some value in some way. But I haven't fired anything just yet.
Yeah, I mean, if Darwin Nunez checks out and Firmino's sold, I think that this Liverpool team at their price is worth an upset. They showed in the Community Shield that anytime they want to play Manchester City, they're going to bring the game to them. It's just depth is your best friend when you have a congested European schedule. And those two clubs, Manchester City and Liverpool, are the deepest teams. So it's kind of hard when you have guys like Tottenham who are going back to Champions League, playing in Europe for the first time in a long time. How are they going to be able to handle that? How are they going to be able to adjust? One last question for you, Joe. The bottom half of the table, is there any teams that you kind of have a concern with that could be relegated this year? Kind of like a bigger price.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Everton and Leeds again. I think are going to be down there, and I think the price is not what it should be. I think bettors and the markets are just looking at them historically, and that they're big clubs. They'll figure it out. Leeds have spent big money, but they lost 2 big players in Rafinha and Calvin Phillips. And as much as I want to see Tyler Adams and Brendan Aronson thrive and be sensational, that's a lot to ask for them in their first seasons in the Premier League to come in and fill those kind of gaps. Everton, kind of a weird place financially. Obviously selling Richarlison, not really spending much money as of yet. And Frank Lampard did okay to be the firefighter right at the end of last season. Just went to a 5-3-2 and just ground out the points and got the performances they needed. Wasn't pretty, but he's talking a lot about we're going to change our style of play. We're going to play more attacking. And then they go and lose 4-0 to Minnesota United in preseason. And he was already talking about relegation then. So it's a bit of negative vibes around Everton already. Wolves, that's one team I want to highlight. Again, they didn't finish last season that too well under Bruno Lage. I think if they have a few bad results early in the season, it could be some pressure on them. Raul Jimenez being out injured to start the season is a big blow for them, and they don't score many goals as it is. So kind of worry about Wolves a little bit. And Crystal Palace, you see them there on the bottom of the screen. I love what Patrick Vieira has done, the young players that they have, but they had a really disrupted preseason. I mean, half their starting lineup couldn't go on the preseason tour of Australia due to travel requirements and restrictions. So they've essentially been working with 2 different squads for all of preseason. And I'm intrigued to see how that impacts them early in the campaign. But I think they'll probably be okay. So, yeah, outside of the 3 new boys, obviously it's going to be really tough for Fulham, Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth to stay up. It always is. I think Leeds and Everton, again, I'm sure we'll get lots of comments from fans of those teams. Delighted that I've tipped them to go down. But I just think they were there for a reason last season, and I haven't seen them improve that much from their squad-wise and playing-wise over the preseason. But there's always one team, right? Always one team that that drops down. So be that a Villa, a Newcastle, a Brighton, who knows what can happen. As we said, this is going to be a weird and wonderful season. But I don't know. Who do you guys think is going to be down there?
Well, if it bleeds, it's Leeds.
Yes, absolutely.
And again, so some of this is just personal bias because I feel like they got very lucky,
very lucky
to be not to avoid relegation last year. I think again 2-1, not the best price on the board, surely, but I think hopefully maybe they have some shocking upsets early. They build a little bit of momentum, and then you can get a little bit bigger price, or just bet against them in some match by match action. So, I think that for sure was the first one I circled. I like all 3. I think the 3 that came up are all sneaky good, actually.
Very good.
And I think they could finish in that middle class. I don't think that any of them are, realistic. Should be maybe Bournemouth, maybe the exception, but I don't think they should be heavy chalk here to be relegated. It is wide open in my mind. How about you, Brad?
Yeah, I'm all over Leeds. If you guys read my preseason preview on Leeds on NBC Sports Edge, Leeds losing Calvin Phillips, even you saw this during the season when he was down, is like the biggest disconjointedness you can have for a team who has a defensive midfielder. I don't think that Brendan Aronson or Tyler Adams will come in and make that instant adjustment. I mean, Aronson, even at Salzburg, wasn't always on his game. And then Tyler Adams wasn't a mainstay in that Leipzig rotation. So these are guys who weren't always on their best and now coming to a harder club. I mean, I think at Leeds, I think I got the odds at like plus 230-ish, somewhere around there. I think that Leeds make the most sense. Even if you think about it, under Bielsa, I think they were a better club, even though people wanted to have his head on a spike. They got a little bit worse. They allowed their opponents in their final third more often under Marsch. And then stats prove that. When the opponents have more opportunities to score on you, they will take advantage of them more times than not. And that is a recipe for disaster when you're playing against top-level clubs.
Very true. Very true. I do worry about Fulham as well. I just want to say
Yes.
the manager, Marco Silva's already come out and is almost having a pop at the owners in the media saying, we've only got 2 centre-backs at the club. What's going on? We need more players in. So I don't know if he's getting the excuses in early, but I do feel like Bournemouth and Fulham just haven't been able to make the signings they want to this summer. Maybe that's because they're waiting for opportunities, be it on loan from some of the top 6 clubs and when they assess their squads. But Nottingham Forest is certainly having a go, signing a whole new team essentially. So who knows with them? But I think with Fulham and Bournemouth, they're just yo-yo clubs, right? I mean, Fulham, 2 relegations and 3 promotions in the last 5 seasons. That's one heck of a ride, to be honest, if you're a Fulham fan. But I don't think it builds continuity at all. And I do worry about them down at Craven Cottage. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think it's going to be a really tight battle between there's a clear bottom 6 or 7 teams in the Premier League this season.
Well, Joe, what other content do you have right now that our viewers and listeners should know about?
Oh, yeah, we got loads going on, Brad, over at Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com. Season previews. We'll be going over all the latest kind of analysis and storylines over at PST ahead of the campaign. So from the title race to the top 4 battle and everything in between, we'll keep you covered. And yeah, I'm heading to Premier League stadiums throughout this season. Lucky enough to be over here in England. So going to be at Craven Cottage this weekend. So over on Twitter at JPW_NBC Sports. I'll have videos, analysis, and loads more from that. So, yeah, cannot wait to get going this season. The sun is shining here in England. It's not too hot. So it's okay. This is a good time of the year.
Joe, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure to talk about footy. We are so close to the season. And again, make sure you guys follow Joe on Twitter at JPW_NBC Sports. He'll have reports all season long and written content on NBCSports.com. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure.
Drew, it's that time of day, man. Edge of the day. What you got for us?
Well, let's do a little callback. You want to guess what Tony Finau's price is for the Masters?
Oh, man. Plus 2,200.
30-1.
Wow, that's actually pretty
right
nice.
now. 30-1. I think I'm going to put that in pocket. I think
I'm going to. I'm going to lock it in.
I mean, he's going to have to carry the momentum for a long time, but it certainly feels like he's figuring out how to win, which is huge. Another guy that I expect to figure out how to win today in Washington, D.C. is a player who, this guy is looking for his first kind of breakthrough at the main tour level. He's done well on challengers. His ranking has steadily improved over 2022 by my numbers. And he qualified in superlative fashion. And it is Woo-Tung Lin. He is taking on Alexei Popyrin. Popyrin is having a 2022 to forget. Picked on him last week, betting against him. Took the dog in John Millman. Millman took care of business in 3. And I think similarly, Woo-Tung Lin is prime to pull off the upset against Alexei Popyrin. Popyrin really does not have the tools beyond a serve to compete at the ATP Tour level at this point in his career. 4-9 on hard court so far this season, including some really, really, really suspect matches. And I think Woo-Tung Lin is ready to go. The one of the fun angles that I like at the beginning of a tennis tournament, and this is the beginning of it, frankly. So if you didn't already know, clay season is over. Now officially over, and we are on the North American hard court swing here. DC is a 500-point event, which means it's kind of that kind of clear middle tier of of tennis tournaments, and this is worth a lot of money and a lot of points to these guys. And in round 1, I typically like to look for a guy who did fairly well in qualifying for his spot. So he's got a feel for the conditions. The court in DC is a little unique. It's not the same type of court that other hard courts are in terms of material. The bounce is a little different. The speed is a little different. It takes some getting used to. So a guy like Woo-Tung Lin, who has now seen it and played well on it, I think is at an advantage over a guy like Poprin, who has not. And I think in general, that's a fun angle to look for early in these tournaments as we kind of go through the transition of court speed from clay season to hard court season. So a fun little handicapping angle to put in your pocket, because there are other men and women that are playing today that fit this same handicap. But Woo-Tung Lin is my favorite on the money line, plus 144. I make him plus 125, so decent value there. I still think he should be the dog, but not by as much as he is. Let's get a winner for this Monday. Brad, where are you going?
Yeah, man, it looks like the money is on the right place, and you were in the right direction with Woo-Tung Lin. So I'll be backing that. I'm going to the DFB Pokal. Love me some cup soccer. I'm going with Frankfurt -1. This line has been going absolutely bonkers. Last night, if you bet the money line, it was -140. Right now, I think the money line sitting around -210. I'm okay with -1. And I think a lot of this pricing has to do with it's being a cup match and how many top flight German clubs have underwhelmed. But their opponent and Mendenberg is literally a club that's coming from 3rd division to 2nd division, now playing against a championship caliber team. Frankfurt, their biggest issue and biggest worry all season last season was their inability to score enough goals when they concede. They add Lucas Alario to pair him with Broye, and I think that tandem is going to be dynamite all season. If you remember, they won Europa last year, and they're carrying that momentum into the season. At -1, I mean, if you want to play combo bets, you can. You could do something like Frankfurt and over 1.5 goals, because this is a cup match. This is a German cup match in one of the highest scoring leagues. You know it's not going to end 1-0, but I actually like -1 better because you're getting you're getting a little bit more value than if you play money line and over 1.5, because that's going to be a little bit more juicy. And I think Frankfurt win this by 2 or 3 goals. This is an opportunity for them to show, despite finishing middle of the table, that they are a legitimate contender to finish top 4, top 3 this season. And this is a good start.
I like it, man. Frankfurt is a team that I had circled. And if there's one thing that I know, it is that Mr. Brad Thomas knows his Deutsch football. And frankly, Frankfurt is going to be a team to circle. DFB Pokal. Fun tournament there. You know, it doesn't get as much coverage as some of the stuff that happens over in the UK, but very worth watching and betting. So let's go Frankfurt.
Yes, let's go Frankfurt. Drew, this was awesome. Everyone, thank you for listening. Do not forget to check us out on NBCSportsEdge.com. You have all the information you need to know after you're listening to us to help you continue to win your wagers. Thanks to you who are watching us on NBC Sports YouTube channel. And again, do not forget to subscribe and rate our podcast. Good luck with your plays. Thank you.